Going to talk about the Three Waters Kayaks Big Fish 120 for just a minute.
Boom!
That's a good fish, Carson.
We got a limit.
You're going to hear this from pretty much a kayaking novice, although I've been around the kayaking world, fishing anyway, for 4 or 5 years now because of Carson. I've only been out a few times in an actual kayak on rivers, and I've always had to borrow kayaks. I've never had my own. Now, due to Carson's relationship with Feel Free, I have my own. So this right here is the bigger one of the Three Waters kayaks. They've got the Big Fish 120 and the Big Fish, I think it's the 105. It's a 10 foot and a 12 foot. We got the big one. And we've had it out 3 or 4 times now. My first time on this one was in a lake, and it went really well. I was pretty impressed. And today is the first time on a river, and I'm even more impressed. So a little bit of background: the first time I ever got in a kayak was one of those sun dolphins that are horrible, and I floated all day in it on a river. It was a rental, and it wasn't a good experience. I did fall out several times, turned it over, all that. Second time in a kayak, I believe, was a borrowed Feel Free Moken 10. And it was okay. I didn't like the seat. Wasn't very comfortable for me. And I also fell out of it, going through some rapids sideways, and it tumped me over. Third time, I believe I borrowed a Wilderness System something. I don't remember if it was a tarpon. It's either a tarpon or a ride. I don't remember what it was. Oh, Carson's yelling at me that it was a tarpon. And successfully, I did not fall out of it or turn it over, but it, wasn't the most stable kayak, and it wasn't just super comfortable in the seat from what I remember. Ever since then, I've always been in borrowed Feel Free Lure 11.5s, and those are pretty good. Although I have fallen out and turned those over, they usually do pretty good for me. They're comfy, they're very stable. But as you can see, or if you've ever seen Carson in his Lure 11.5, which is he's in right now, you'll know that they are kind of a shallow boat. And these Big Fish 120s are really deep, and I like that. And it is super stable. If you've read up on them or heard any reviews, you already know they're very stable with the hull top that they got right here, this cathedral hull. Of course, you had the Beaver tail rudder. Man, that's awesome. The rudder, the mechanism of the rudder, the steering, everything about it's great. Lots of room in this one to put whatever you want in it. The seat, I like it better than the Lure seat. I think it's very comfy. It's very simple, up and down. It's got a couple of different positions. I've only ever been into it when it was up, and I like the seat a lot. I like it really well. I was on it on that lake, one of his last tournaments. I was on it for several hours, and man, I was super comfy. Plenty of room to stand. I have stood in this, a little bit wobbly when I stand in these things, but I can do it. Anybody can do it. I usually just take a tackle bag maybe, and I just kind of set it up there. Again, look at that hull. It's awesome. Super stable. This is by far the most stable boat I've ever been in, kayak. And Carson over there, that Lure, I mean, they're stable boats. They're known for being stable, but I like this one better. I think I like this Three Waters better because I feel more comfy in it. It's more stable, and I like the seat better. I mean, I like the Feel Free seats, but it's got springs, a lot of moving parts, and it requires a little bit of maintenance to it to keep them up. And this one looks like it's just simple, and I like that. So I don't necessarily go out on lakes and kayaks too much, but the rivers and creeks, I like doing that with Carson and Carter. I don't really need to take a whole lot of stuff. 2 rods is usually all I need out there, and the built-in rod holders work just fine for me. So I don't really need a crate or a bag or anything like that to put a bunch of rods in. You know, if you know how feel-free steering works, you just push your toes on these levers and that turns you left and right. Works really well. It's a very, very solid design. And this boat, I really like it. Carson took it on the river yesterday by himself. He wanted to try it out for the first time, and he came back raving about it also. He really likes this boat too. For rivers, it's a great river boat. It's a little bit heavy, so I think it's right at 100 pounds or so. And so it is a little bit heavy when you're trying to move it, portage it, load it. It does not have the feel-free wheel in it. I wish it did, because that's a great feature on those that we really use a lot. And I wish they'd put it on here, but I get why they didn't. This is not a feel-free, it's a 3 Waters, and they wanted to keep the wheel with feel-free. So one thing I probably need is a couple of scupper plugs, because I do get a little water through these front holes. That's just because I weigh a lot. When I had the feel-free cooler in the back, it's pretty heavy, and it was loaded down with ice and water, and I had a lot of weight in here, and I had a lot of water come in up here. And I think with a couple plugs, I don't think I'd have any problems at all. You can see there's water in it now. So I need to get a couple plugs, put them in there. Storage, I'm not going to open that up. You know, you can kind of tell what it is. It's dry storage, works great. They got some really good deep pockets back up in here to put stuff in. I do have a complaint about them, although they are handy and you can use them. You can see it's kind of hard, especially when I'm sitting down and floating, to reach in here and get my stuff out of there. Again, with the scupper plugs, I need some, because these shaky heads are full of water, because all that water goes right down in there into those pockets. So really, that's the only design, you know, I don't even know if you call it a flaw. I don't know how else you would put pockets in there with the seat that goes up and down. But anyway, they don't work real good for me, just because I have a hard time getting in them. Great molded in handles that are very solid for lifting, so very happy with that. Of course, here's your rudder cable. Pull your rudder up and down right here with this lever, so you know, you get shallow. I can't hardly do it with one hand. Oops, it's a little bit tight. It's a new one. It's better than it was, but it is a little bit tight to pull up. But there you go. See, I had to get a little leverage on it. Pull your rudder up and back down. Whoops, caught right there. And you can lock it in. So overall, this is a very solid boat. They're $9.99 at your local Feel Free and 3 Waters Kayaks dealers. So I would suggest you go check them out. It's a great boat. Oh, look at Carson up there on his lure, standing on the front. I bet you can in that Dorado. Just thought of one more thing that I was excited about when I got the kayak, but I don't think it's going to work very good. We're about to go down those rapids, and I don't want those trees to snag me, so I'm going to put my rods in my lap here. But you know, these things have some rod holders up here, right there, and I haven't used them because I'm not real sure they're gonna work for me. a great idea, and I was excited about it, but I don't know exactly how it's supposed to work, because like if I try to put my rod tip in there, you can see that I don't know where my rod's supposed to go. Like in my lap, I don't really necessarily want it in my lap. I'd rather stick it down in there, and they've got like a channel right there, but there's nowhere really to put your reel. I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe when your seat's down and you're transporting, that's what they're for, but for out here on the water, I'm not real sure. I don't know. Maybe I'm doing something wrong too, who knows. If you got a solution for that, or if you can tell me I'm dumb and doing something wrong, let me know. We are about to go down these. I did do a deep water entry earlier on this, and I've never done that, but it was pretty good. So I am going to get rigged up here. Of course, there's your, all your kayaks pretty much have this paddle holder here, which is nice. Of course, that right there, that's supposed to be, I see. So you put your tip in there and then just lock it down right here, and then I guess your reel just hangs out there. I don't know. Wasn't real sure how that works. So I'm gonna get in this sucker and see if I can get down through there without falling out. These are the types of things that usually give me trouble when I'm in one of these stupid plastic boats. So one thing I noticed earlier too is I was coming down through back there. I did not have the camera on, and I hit a rock, and I hit it pretty decent, and man, I tell you what, it didn't really even move my kayak. In the past, in some of the smaller kayaks I've been in, that would have probably knocked me out of it. I'd have probably hit it just right, and it would have just knocked me right out. But I did that earlier, and it was no problem at all. Stupid Veritas, look at this thing. This whole thing like is loose, you know what I mean? So you got to take it and move your rod back. Gosh, these things are trash.